Hi, thank you for watching. I want to share with you today how I made an A in anatomy and physiology. And this is a study plan that I really liked for myself, and I also really like it for my own in-seat students. As you guys know, everyone learns differently, so not one plan is going to be perfect for every person. So I'll share with you this plan, and you may find that it's one that might work for you. Some people like to write note cards, some people like to rewrite their notes, make Quizlets, and that kind of stuff. It just didn't really work for me. So this is the plan that I used, and for me, it was the magic. So I'm gonna share it with you now, and I hope it helps. So to do this study plan, the first thing that you're gonna wanna do is, of course, attend lecture if you take your class in seat, or you'll watch the lecture on YouTube or whatever videos your professor makes available to you. Personally, I think you're in the right place. You should totally watch mine. And you're gonna take detailed notes. It's very important that your notes are super detailed so that you've got every bit of information that you need to best understand the concept. The next thing we're gonna do is a thing that a lot of students admit, or a lot of my students admit that they don't really do very often, and that is to involve the textbook. A lot of students in anatomy try their best to memorize as many things as possible. And that works pretty well for lab, but it does not work very well for the conceptual part of physiology. So what happens is students memorize all these points and these big important words, and then when they take a test, they do great on multiple choice, but they are not prepared for short answer or discussion, because those are questions that you really need to understand the concept to be able to answer from any angle. So the book is going to be super important in doing that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to determine how many pages in our textbook, whatever textbook you use for your class, we're going to determine how many pages in the textbook we need to cover to get ready for the test. So let's say that there are 3 chapters on our next test. There may be more. Again, these are just samples that we're using to describe the plan. But say that we have a test over chapters 4 through 6. We're gonna open our text and we're gonna separate out chapters 4 through 6. And we're gonna count how many pages are in chapters 4 through 6 that we're responsible for understanding. We are then going to divide up those pages into a little calendar. So we're going to use a little calendar to separate out the pages so we don't overwhelm ourselves. I think a lot of students, myself included a lot, would cram, and sometimes even cram way in advance, but just study for hours and hours and hours, and then you end up forgetting so much of it. It just doesn't stick because you're so overwhelmed. So I find the best thing to do is just take little bites of the information so that you can digest them, keep them, and then recall them when it comes time for your test. So let's say, just for sake of example, that we have 20 pages that we're responsible for in those 4 or 3 chapters that we've got coming up on our test. So what I would really like to do, and this plan works best if we start in advance, I would like to get this deep reading done in about 5 days previous to the test. Then I want to leave about 2 days for us to just review and relax and go through the information, but without too much stress. So that's about a 7-day span previous to your exam. Again, it works best that way if you're able to do it. So we've got 20 pages. We want to get the deep reading done in 5 days. So that means we would want to read about 4 pages a day. Again, just a sample. You may have a lot more pages than that you have to focus on. But what we would do after we determine how many pages we're responsible for, and then we divide them up by how many days before the test, leaving 2 days previous to the test for just a light review. So I would get out a calendar or planner, and then I would divide up those pages. So here's our test over here on a Monday. And so the previous Sunday, I would want to read pages 10 through 14 or 10 through 15 if you had 5 pages. And I would divide this up and make myself a plan for each day, leaving those 2 days previous to the test. I would then go through and mark my text with sticky notes to divide up the sections that I'm going to read each day, and I would write the date. So on Monday, I'm going to read pages 10 through 15. So on that Monday, when I start my plan, I'm going to read for deep understanding, meaning I'm going to read slowly, methodically. I'm going to pay a lot of attention to bold words, really try to understand the concept. I'm not going to be too stressed because I know I've only got 4 to 5 pages or 6 pages or whatever it ends up being for your particular test, but you know that it's just this small bit. And we're starting in advance, so the stress level is a lot less. We're going to go through for deep understanding. As soon as we finish, we're going to go back to the beginning of that section of reading, and we're going to go through the paragraphs, and any bold word that we see, we are going to define it out loud. You might feel a little crazy, but just define it out loud. And if you hesitate at all in your definition or explanation to your invisible friend, then make a note, start a list. I didn't understand differentiation, so I'm gonna write that down. Okay, can I explain this figure, this drawing that's in the book that I know my professor went over? Can I explain what's happening? I'm feeling a little uncomfortable with that. Make a note to go over that figure. Then we go to our next bold word. We remember it like a champ. Perfect. We don't need to write that one down. We're going to keep going through this selection of pages, making a note of any time we hesitated to explain a process. So we'll end up with a list at the end of that. Once we have that list, we're going to then go back a second time. Any bold word on that list, we are going to once again try to define it out loud to our invisible friend. And if we struggle at all, we are going to leave it on the list. We're going to go to the next word. Can we explain this? Do we feel comfortable with it? Yes? Great. Scratch it off the list. We're going to continue going through the list until we have scratched off all the terms we're comfortable with. And then we're going to go back another time. And now we're going to focus on all the terms that are left and all the figures that are left. And we're going to keep going back as many times as it takes to eliminate any of the misunderstood terms or figures. So your study time for that day is over when your list is empty. That may take you 10 times. That may take you 3 times. It may only take you 2 because it was a night that you just were really on. Either way, when you're finished with that, you're done for that day. We stop studying. Again, we don't feel stressed because we've got just this little part. And then on Tuesday, we're going to go to the next 4 or 5 pages. We will repeat the same process on Tuesday until we've eliminated our list of misunderstood terms or processes. And we're going to do this until we get to the end of our deep reading. Once we get to the end of our deep reading, we've got this 2 days previous to our test that we can just review. So if we want to review our outlines, if we want to go online and watch some different videos, if we want to make some note cards, great. You can do all those extra things, but only after you've done that deep reading for comprehension. And then the only thing left to do is just be awesome and make an A. And this really, really worked for me. I hope that it will work for some of you. If you have any questions about this plan or if there was anything you didn't understand, feel free to email me. I'll be happy to send it to you in writing, and I would love your feedback.